we'll go ahead and get started with Mayor Michael Hancock.
Thank you, Teresa, and I want to thank every one of you for joining us this morning. Joining me this morning to answer questions on a couple of topics, a bevy of people, but I want to make sure you know that Robert Bob McDonald, our Director of Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, has joined us. Director of Public Safety, Murphy Robinson, has joined us. Police Chief Paul Pazin has joined us, and Sheriff Elias Diggins has also joined us. I also want to acknowledge that Britta Fisher, the Executive Director of Housing and Opportunity, Sustainability and Opportunity, has joined us as well. And I want to thank them for being here to answer questions as necessary as we go through today's press briefing. We're going to start with COVID. We've had several weeks of really encouraging movement, thanks to all of the people of Denver for continuing to wear masks, maintain social distancing, avoiding large crowds, working from home when possible, when washing their hands as frequently as possible. Our numbers are really trending in the right direction. Over the last few weeks, we've cut the average number of new daily cases in half. We're now seeing an average of fewer than 40 new cases a day. That's wonderful news for us. Our positivity rate is below 3%, and our hospital capacity remains strong. While most of you are really doing your part in complying with public health orders, we still have some folks who aren't. And that's why we've stepped up enforcement. This is not the time for us to ease up. We are not out of the woods yet, and so we want to continue to really encourage people to do what's necessary, comply with the orders, and do what we've been doing. And again, that includes wearing our masks, washing our hands, social distancing, avoiding large crowds, so that we can continue to trend. This is a health and economic imperative that we continue along these trends. Now, we've set up this time for an update of COVID-19 response, and we will answer questions on that specific topic. But we're also clear that in addition to COVID public health crises that we're all facing and experiencing, there's also growing public health and safety concern connected to crime and community relations with law enforcement. Denver is not alone in this experience. It's happening in cities all across the nation. And we should not be surprised that with rising unemployment and despair, there is an increase in crime. They typically go hand in hand. Dysfunction and paralysis in DC isn't helping us at all. But in Denver, we recognize we're not every other big city. We have our own record and approach to addressing crime, youth violence, public safety, and reform. Our residents rightly want to see law enforcement that is fair and just, not tainted by racial bias, and focused on crime prevention as much as crime apprehension. It's clear to me that many of our residents don't know what Denver has already been doing. So corrosive, ill-informed proposals calling for defunding and abolishing the police department are making their way into the public discourse and even into the deliberations of City Council. There's a right way and an informed way to legislate. There are also destructive ways to abuse the legislative process under the guise of advancing public conversation. And we owe the people of Denver better than that. So today we're going to spend some time sharing what we know about the increase in crime in Denver and how we are addressing this challenge. We are also going to go over in some detail reforms and public safety innovations that separate Denver from most other cities. I have spoken to a lot of people on both sides of the issue of policing in our nation and in our cities like Denver, Colorado. I've also had conversations with those who are calling for defunding the police and trying to get to the heart of really what they're calling for or asking for. And during those conversations, many of which have been very thoughtful conversations, they have shared their interest in separating the delivery of human services from crime fighting and vice versa. But unfortunately, it's a label that doesn't really inform, and worse, it has emboldened some to push for measures that will erode law enforcement, undermine the morale of our officers, and make public safety worse for our communities and neighborhoods, particularly our low-income communities where there is already tremendous challenges with regards to crime. And when measures of this magnitude are proposed for purely political reasons, without transparency, without accountability, and without community involvement or even community conversation, it's reckless and hypocritical. So we need to face this head on. And I want to make clear where my administration stands. So let's be clear. So long as I'm mayor, we will not abolish the Denver Police Department. So long as I'm mayor, we will not erode the capacity of our law enforcement and first responders to keep our communities, neighborhoods, schools, and homes in Denver safe. It has always and will continue to be my top priority. So long as I'm mayor, we will continue to innovate and implement equitable, unbiased, and racially informed reforms that strengthen rather than weaken the bonds of trust between communities of color and our police, many of whom are people of color. This has been my priority since 2011 when I came in as mayor of the city. And you can look from my very first steps as mayor of this city, working with our police department to begin the process of transitioning and transforming the culture. In the history of the city, I am the only mayor to have served on the city council. And so I want you to know I have a very healthy respect for the legislative role. I know the challenges of the jobs of members of city council and the importance of being connected to their districts. I know they want to do what's right by their residents. Part of doing right is being aware of what has already been done. Denver is a national leader when it comes to innovations and reforms in law enforcement. They haven't been cosmetic changes either. They have been comprehensive, structural reforms to improve both accountability and the way we protect the safety in our city moving forward. I want to share some of the things that we've done. We have mandated the use of body cams for both on and off duty police officers, for SWAT officers during tactical operations, and now sheriff deputies this year. We implemented mandatory implicit bias training for police. We've begun strategic recruitment of police officers with an emphasis on diversity and different life experiences. We created an internal system to identify officers who may not be violating policy, but whose performance and interactions with the public warrant our concern. We require reporting on demographic information of all police stops. We eliminated some jail fees and cash bail. We decriminalized marijuana, public consumption tickets, and launched the Turn Over a New Leaf program. We adopted sentencing reforms to limit fines and jail time for low-level quality of life crimes. And I want you to know we've also went to the process of transforming our county court bench. 9 years, in 9 years in this administration, we have appointed a more diverse, empathetic county court bench. And that bench has launched a supported multiple specialty courts, including homeless, sobriety, and drug courts. In the police department, we banned choke and strangleholds and shooting into moving vehicles, among many other use of force changes. We increased the authority of the Office of Independent Monitor, required retention of body camera videos recorded in the Denver jails. We've improved police disciplinary process, and the Denver police have a duty to intervene. There is now mandatory de-escalation tactics in place because we recognized several years ago that this training was critical to reducing instances of excessive force. We have new de-escalation training for firefighters and paramedics, significantly increased community policing. We launched a new support team assisted response pilot program, better known as STARS, to team up unarmed medics, medical health professionals, and navigators to help those in need of help. Thank you, Chief Paul Payson, for championing that program. We started and expanded our co-responder program, a national model, one of the most heralded efforts around the nation. And I have spoken all over the country on this program because Denver was one of the first cities to place social workers and clinicians in the cars with our police officers. We've established a case manager hub in every police district to better connect people in crises with medical, mental health, and other services. We've begun preparing for upcoming opening of the Solutions Center Crisis Stabilization Center in our city. Again, finding better ways to help those who might be in a mental health crisis in our city. Added after hours and weekend navigators to help released inmates connect to housing, transportation, mental health, and other supports. This, again, are critical steps. And we created a progressive community-shaped use of force policy for both the police and sheriff's department. We required all police officers to file detailed use of force reports whenever they draw their weapons. And we initiated police conduct investigations even without a formal complaint being filed. We also recognize that public safety in Denver is guided by our opportunity index, so we can get to the root causes of crime and address those challenges and not just respond to the outcomes of it. We are not done. We've recognized we've done a lot, but we also acknowledge the fact that we are not done and we have much work to do. But it does not call for the abolishment of our police department. But as we look to improve on this record, let's not confuse Denver with other cities. Let's look at what has worked and let's continue to commit to making investments. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Department of Public Safety and Director Murphy Robinson to continue this conversation.
Mayor, thank you so much. I appreciate it. As I sat reading the letters from proponents and opponents from the proposed bill last night, I was also listening to the Denver Police Department on the radio, and they were responding to shots fired calls on Federal involving more than 100 people in many rival gangs. I felt it was ironic that there was a bill being put forward to abolish the very people that were running into harm's way for our community every day. First, I want to say thank you. Thank you to our police officers who risk their lives every day so that our city may be safe to live, work, and play in. In this global crisis that we're dealing with, multiple global crises that we're dealing with, our police officers have been on the front line protecting our city from violence, but putting themselves in the harm's way from COVID as well. They're the ones that answer the call regardless of the risk and have a rich history of doing so. It was just a few months ago that our community members from all over Denver were going outside and howling, donating food and supplies to the Denver Police Department in appreciation for their services. The stark contrast of what we are hearing from a small but vocal minority of the community today, and it gives me pause. As a Denver native and a lifelong resident, I am not condoning, nor will I support the rush charter change that will be voted for tonight at City Council. There is blatant disregard for the process in place for the City Council legislators to assure the proposed charter changes are representative of the majority of the community. But I want to pivot to what we're doing in the Department of Public Safety and how we answer the call for systemic change in our community, which we have all agreed to that we want to help our community do. To continue on with what the mayor said, we have launched the Office of Criminal Justice Transformation and Policy that will focus on identifying the changing barriers in criminal justice systems and make sure that we can change those barriers so that they're no longer there for our community. We have funded youth violence prevention microgrants in our community. We continue to support DPD in launching the STAR program and modifying the 911 triage system to triage calls that come to us so that we can have alternative responses. We're 90% in compliance with Senate Bill 217 before the bill was even passed, and working to become 100% in compliance before the end of the year. I have directed a complete decrease of the Denver County jail system through COVID, and look forward to implementing more of those measures as we move forward in the coming months. Most importantly, we participated in numerous community conversations just in talking about reform. And in the community conversations, they requested that the Department of Safety fund the facilitation that the Citizen Oversight Board reimagine public safety task force conversation, and we agreed to do so. We are funding that. Denver's civic DNA for many generations is that we as leaders, community stakeholders, neighbors, and everyone involved come together to implement positive change for our leadership and in the city. This united leadership allows for constructive dialogue and innovative ideas, but also honors the hard work and collaboration of the leaders that came before us. Let's work together to make Denver the world-class city where all voices should be considered when it comes to proposed charter changes that would dramatically affect the people in our community. With that said, I'd like to give it to Chief Paul Pazin for his remarks.
Murphy and Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. First of all, safety of our community is one of the primary responsibilities of our city. And right now, we are dealing with multiple crises that appear to be manifesting themselves into a rise in crime in our community. We cannot allow nor tolerate violence in any of our neighborhoods. We must stand together to address crime. The police and the community must work collaboratively to keep the people of Denver safe. We also must recognize the moment and the movement that we are in, and to look for ways to create a better police department as well as better opportunities for our vulnerable populations. The City of Denver and the Denver Police Department are leading in this space. We are taking a public health view on public safety issues. This approach provides assistance to those in need and allows our officers to focus on those who are creating harm in our community. We are national leaders in this field with our co-responders, our law enforcement assisted diversion program, our support team assisted response, and newly launched Case Manager Hub. This comprehensive approach will help us keep our city safe as well as assist individuals in need. Again, we have room to improve. However, we are much further down the path than other cities or police departments across the country. Defund, abolish, or replace the police will likely have a devastating impact on our city. People likely will not choose to live, work, or play in a community they don't feel safe in. This means less opportunity, fewer jobs, and a smaller tax base to provide the essential services to our community. Now is the time that we must work together to build on a very good department filled with dedicated officers who do incredible work every single day for the people of Denver. With that, I'd like to introduce Sheriff Elias Dillon.
Thank you, Chief. As a person born in Denver and raised in Montbello, I'm honored and privileged to be a public servant in uniform. I know that the proud men and women of the Denver Sheriff's Department who I serve beside would agree that we hear the citizens' concerns for where we have been, and we're ready to make the necessary changes to transform into the agency they want us to be. In the past few weeks that I have been the sheriff, we've already begun to implement shifts to the way that we think and act, as we know that the deprivation of a person's freedom is their punishment. The philosophy of all of us leading with our humanity has been shared with our senior leaders, every one of our supervisors, and this week we begin to plant those seeds of transformation in the hearts and minds of every person in our agency. We've also begun to think about recruitment and retention and making sure that we have staff who value our mission and where we're going as an agency. We also are beginning to make sure that all of our staff have the tools to be able to do their jobs right, and also holding them to a higher standard. We're going to encourage our staff to engage in professional growth opportunities and build into our culture a belief that community service is a part of our responsibility. Most importantly, we're also moving towards a renewed focus on helping the most vulnerable in our custody, especially those who have mental health conditions. I tell you today that our actions will ring louder than our words. We are proud public servants and are committed to making our department better than it has ever been. I'll now turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Sheriff Diggins, and let me thank Director Robinson, Chief Payson, and Sheriff Diggins for joining us today. These are men, and they represent men and women who are very compassionate about the work that they do, and quite frankly, are committed to excellence and dedication to the people. Neither one of them feel like they need to, depart from the commitment to the values of excellence in policing and law enforcement, but continue to work hard to make sure that we treat every citizen right. We understand the pain the community has felt, particularly certain segments of our community, and we owe it to them to not only make sure the city remains safe, but also we correct that culture that might allow for such actions to continue to be inflicted upon the community, particularly communities of color. Before we turn over to question and answer or open up for Q&A, let me also acknowledge the presence of Fire Chief Todd Bauer, who is on the line as well. Chief Bauer, we thank you and acknowledge the fact that 55 of the City of Denver firefighters are right now on the line in helping to fight wildfires all over the state of Colorado. Let's continue to keep those firefighters, as well as all of the first responders who are helping to try to contain and to put out those wildfires all over the state, in our thoughts and prayers as they go forward. Thank you, Chief Bowers. We'll open up for Q&A. Teresa, you're going to facilitate.
Sure, Mayor. And I think David from Denver 7 had his hand up first. So David, go ahead with your question. Thanks.
Yeah. Teresa, can you hear me?
We sure can. Gotcha.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief Payson. I have a question for both of you, if I can do that. Given the sharp rise in youth gun violence, and of course the shooting on Federal over the weekend is a prime example of what could end up being a record-breaking year for the city of Denver, what is it, gentlemen, that is not being done yet to curb this kind of violence?
Chief Payson, I'll allow you to go first on the question.
So two things here. First, let me start by indicating the mayor through the Youth Violence Action Table has really given us a leg up on many of these challenges. However, the fact that COVID is impacting our daily life is really limiting our ability for that direct outreach, the direct intervention that has been proven effective in the past. We recognize these challenges. We recognize that this too, youth violence, is a public health emergency, and we must work together in order to address this for the safety of our community.
Yeah, I want to join the chief in that. I can tell you that as early as last November, December, we started the process of trying to really prepare for what we thought would be a hot summer with regards to our young people. Obviously, COVID does complicate that. We got young people who have been for months, just like everyone else, locked up, shut down without much to do on their hands. In the meantime, they've been on social media, and a lot of these beefs start on social media. But you see the action table in my administration in partnership with a lot of the youth and youth serving organizations leaning in to create these pop-ups and these safe zones for our young people. This is in partnership with these organizations all over the city. Our youth mini grants that we had actually planned before the start of the year is helping with that effort as well, and we're putting more resources toward that. But I'll say this as we go on to the next question, is that as the chief has said, and I have said numerous times, you know what? The community has a greater hand and ability to stem the tide of youth violence than even the law enforcement does. And that is for parents, for siblings, for neighbors, for friends to know what young people are doing. We see these beasts beginning to brim. We need to sound the alarm, and we need to ask for help from not only law enforcement, but from social workers and from adults and families to make sure that our young people, we can prevent some of these activities that are taking place in our community. Next question.
All right, I see Esteban has his hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, do you have an update on the Pepsi Center site? Has the city at this point come up with some sort of agreement with the state? I know it's still open. We're almost halfway through August. So can you or someone on your staff provide a little more information about that testing site?
I'll share with you the latest briefing I have, Esteban. We continue to have the Pepsi Center operating. We're still in partnership with the state. The state has jumped in and really been a tremendous partner with the city on this issue. At the same time, we are, as a city, beginning to transition to community-based testing sites. And we encourage our residents to go to denvergov.org to find the schedule and location where these will occur. And that's where we plan to continue our testing program going forward, even as we try to hold on to the Pepsi Center. But, in the event as we continue forward, the goal is to have the community testing sites begin to take more of the weight or more of the volume of testing going forward. We have found that is the most effective means to get people tested when you're close and you're meeting them where they are. Bob McDonald, any additional information you'd like to share?
Well, I would only add, Mayor, that we're going to continue, just as we have as a department and as a city, continue to focus on underserved communities as we build out that community-based testing plan. That's been a huge focus, and it will continue to be.
Next question.
All right, thank you both. And now, before I get to you, Elise, and you are next, I just want to remind everyone, if you are on the phone, you can *6 to unmute yourself once we get you in the queue. So Elise, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I have a question for Chief Payson and Director Robinson. We've had 2 mass shootings over 2 of the past weekends here in Denver. What is the Denver Police Department doing different to address the gun violence we've seen this summer?
Elise, we truly do have a crisis on our hands with young people gaining access to firearms. This is something that we are focused on. We have taken more than 1,000 illegal guns off the streets. However, we have had a 25% increase in stolen guns. We may sound like a broken record in this, but again, this is where community comes together and helps us keep our neighborhoods and our young people safe. Unfortunately, we have too many irresponsible gun owners that are leaving weapons, leaving guns in their cars or unsecured that are then finding their way into the hands of young people. We have low-level disputes that are turning into high levels of violence. We must work together. We must figure out different ways to connect with young people in order to serve as an intervention to this. Our efforts on South Federal were truly to engage in voluntary compliance. How can we do this safe? Our officers were deployed down there. We did have some direct enforcement actions, to include a shooting where we were able to take, again, yet another illegal firearm off the streets. However, this is a significant challenge, and our only path forward is by working with our community in order to help keep our young people safe.
And I would say, Elise, one of the ways we work with our community is, as you all know, we have a GRID program, our Gang Reduction Initiative, where we have civilian former gang members out in the community to discuss these and really work with and do outreach with some of the people in gangs, as well as with family members and that community. And so it is important to know that they are out. They are looking at new strategies, but we also must ignite our community, like the chief said, ignite the people who are around these young people who have access to guns, and help them realize that we cannot continue to go down this route in Denver.
Next question.
Thanks, Murphy. And if you can, please, if you're not asking a question, go ahead and just turn off your camera. That would be great. Kim Posey. Hey, Kim, go ahead.
Excuse me one second, Kim. Andrea, thank you, Andrea. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, Mayor. A couple of questions about COVID. How long do you think the Pepsi Center testing site will be open? How long is it taking to get results back there now? And can you talk a little bit about enforcement? Any sort of numbers you have on ticket, or you were talking about how you'd stepped up enforcement efforts?
I'm going to let Bob McDonald answer your question. We're going to keep the Pepsi Center open as long as we can in partnership with the state. And again, at the same time, Kim, you'll see our community-based testing sites open up. Bob McDonald?
Yeah, we, as the mayor mentioned, we are going to continue to build out our community testing sites to supplement whatever is being done at the Pepsi Center. In terms of enforcement, the mayor mentioned earlier that numbers are down, but I want to remind everyone that just 3 weeks ago, we were having conversations about re-implementing public health controls, and so it can very easily turn on us. So we are going to work very closely and hard to make sure that everyone is in compliance with public health orders. We're getting a lot of support and collaboration from the Department of Safety to make sure that that compliance is high. And I want to thank everyone who's contributing to compliance numbers, both industry and individuals. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we unfortunately there are weekends where we still issue a number of summonses to businesses or individuals that might be out of compliance, and we'll continue to do that.
And Bob, how many days are we seeing tests turned around at Pepsi Center?
Yeah, it's dropped. It's getting a little better. I believe it's around 4 to 5 days right now, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Do we have any additional questions? I know we've gone a little bit over, but I want to make sure that we leave time for anyone else who might have a question.
For me, all right. This is Connor with CBS 4.
Hi, Connor. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question regarding last night's shooting. Sorry, let me mute that. Director Robinson mentioned last night's shooting involving more than 100 people in rival gangs. This comes just a few days after the city was warning about illegal gatherings on Federal. Can you tell me more about if these gatherings are new, if these are gatherings that have just been happening, and why last night and other ones may be turning violent?
So, Connor, let me jump into this situation or this question. Gatherings on South Federal are truly something that has taken place in a very peaceful way. Historically, this is part of the culture, the fabric of Denver, and we've been able to do this without the types of violence that we've seen recently, like last night. We were very concerned about escalations of violence, and we want to continue to work with our community, with leaders in the neighborhoods to help us keep this community safe. Unfortunately, we had rival groups that came in contact with each other. Settling disputes with firearms is never okay in our city. It's not okay. We cannot tolerate it, and we must work together in order to address it. We will continue to look for ways to enhance our ability to put more officers out to serve as an intervention, as well as the grid partners, the grass partners, our leaders, civic leaders in the community to help us find alternatives so folks aren't resulting in these types of high levels of violent actions.
Any other questions?
Deb Takahara, I think, Deb, you're on the phone. *6 to unmute if you can.
Yes, I just had a follow-up to the shooting on Federal. I know Connor just asked about it, but just, Mayor, if you could talk about, what you would like the city to do and what you would like the police department to do, what can be done to prevent something like that from happening again next Sunday?
Well, as Chief Payson, I think, has said now a couple of times, Devin, and it's a very good question. We've got too many young people who have firearms on their hands, and unfortunately, many of them have acquired these firearms because those of us who are firearm owners, have not been smart and careful with how we protect and lock them up. And so these young people are able to acquire them by breaking into cars, finding them unlocked in people's glove boxes, trunks, whatever. And we simply have got to, one, make sure we're doing a better job protecting their guns. Secondly, we got to make sure as community members that we're all proactive in acknowledging if our young people are going to these places, maybe it's time for them not to go for a while and to let things cool off for a while. And so a clarion call to the community is, and I agree with Chief Payson, having grown up in the city, we've known that there has been cruising and gathering along Federal for decades, but they've not always been violent. In fact, most of the days they're not. And we want to continue to encourage the peaceful get-togethers. But until peace returns, we want to encourage folks maybe stay home and take some time off from the gatherings along Federal until the police department's able to dissect and find those who are actually perpetrating this type of terror and pain in the community. So we got to be smarter and be more strategic and recognize that we all, as members of the community, have a greater ability to stem the tide of these type of acts in our community than even the police department.
Esteban, we got time for just one quick follow-up before we wrap it up.
Yeah, this was back to the shooting. I know that Federal, there's a pretty large predominant Latino population there. I'm curious, Chief Payson, is there some, our officers, do they get some sort of cultural training there to make sure that they're talking to people the right way, that they're reaching out in some of these areas? Like, is that a challenge for Denver Police? And then also, how does the department work to address that?
Esteban, this is something that we're, again, one of those initiatives that we're very proud of. We initiated the Community Culture Academy. Actually, just last week, we had to do this virtually. We really drill this down to the specific neighborhoods that new officers then get to hear directly from community members, so they have a greater understanding of the culture of the community in order to bridge that divide. It was very well received. We have some amazing folks that serve as facilitators, as community members that help really explain to our brand new officers or to our officers what it means to police particular neighborhoods in our communities in order to have greater levels of understanding and in order to provide better service. And we can certainly follow up with you. We just hosted this last week. Some amazing folks that really have contributed greatly to the level of awareness for our officers in our neighborhoods.
Chief, thank you. And thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it.